Greetings, traveler. Have you ever felt that you're working on a career that just isn't taking you where you want to go? Today, we'll be taking a look at how to identify if you're in such a position and what you can do to change it. So let's just jump right in. Today, we'll be talking about what being stuck in the wrong career feels like, what it looks like, what is the hard way of going about changing it, what is an easier way of going about it that will hopefully lead you to where you want to go much easier. And finally, I'll be giving you a 4-step framework to put that easy mode way of thinking into action. So I'm Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for more than 10 years now. I've worked for companies like EA, TriAce, Cygames, and so on. I've worked on FIFA, Star Ocean, War Dragons, and a bunch of other titles. So this series is a way for me to answer to the request of many people around me to talk about the experiences that I've had in my life and in the games industry and share it with more people. So if you are walking the path of making games, this video is for you. So let's just jump right in. First of all, what does it look like to be stuck in the wrong career path? How does this path lead you into somewhere you want to go, and why can't you change it? Well, let's look at an example. Let's say you've worked on a casual mobile game before. You've worked on it for a while, maybe the time came to change positions. So you applied for many positions, but all the interviewers saw that your previous position and your only experience at the moment was on casual games. So they think, well, if you've done it before, then there's a good chance you can do it next. So most likely you will end up in some sort of relevant position, perhaps another mobile casual game. And then you're thinking at some point, maybe during the next position or 5 positions down the line, that this is not what you want to be working on. You want to work, for example, on PC action games, but your CV is full of just mobile casual games. So when the time comes to check what's available for your next position, only mobile positions are available to you because that's what people see you have experience in. And as we know, everybody loves a specialist, so you're very, very likely to be selected for that type of role. So what does it feel like to be in that kind of position? Well, you'll be getting tasks that you find boring. It's something you've done before. You have no intrinsic interest in it. People will give it to you because you seem to know how to do it, but you will not feel motivated to do it at all. You will not like the project you're working on, even though there's nothing wrong with the project. It's just a game project like many others, but you feel no motivation, no pleasure working on it. Also, you might feel that you've hit a glass ceiling where perhaps you're working as a lower rank member of the team and you wish to one time at some point become a manager or a director or a producer or something to hopefully maybe then get to work on your favorite project. But without, again, relevant experience, it's impossible for people to pick you for that sort of position. Well, not really impossible. Sometimes it happens, but it's largely down to luck and less down to what you can control yourself. So today we'll be talking about the things you can control and let luck help you. So what this looks like in specific job situations is you might be an artist, but you want to code instead. You're making an RPG right now, but you want to work on racing games. Or you're working in one country when you want to be somewhere else, but without any means to do so, without any relevant experience, it's impossible for you to move to that other country. Perhaps you're a manager, you're managing people, you're having meetings every day about other people's work, while you want to do less of that and focus on just the thing you want to work on as a specialist instead of a manager. These are examples. You don't have to be necessarily in that situation. The point is that you're doing one thing when you really want to be doing another. So when you find yourself in that situation, you might try a number of things. You might request to be reassigned to your boss or to the team leader or whoever. But that usually gets met with a flat rejection. And it's not because people are evil and they want to crush your dreams and your hopes and so on. Not at all. They're being very pragmatic. There simply isn't a position to answer your desire, because if, let's say, a team is working on a certain type of title, then there's a high chance that that company is specialized in that sort of title. So for you to drastically change your career path in that situation, it would be difficult. It would certainly be difficult for the people you talk to grant you that wish and make that decision. You might try to change companies, but even if you do change companies due to your past experience, maybe you end up in the same kind of project, just in a different company, in which case you made a step forward, but actually it's just a step to the side. Then you might try to complain to others and say how you have all this talent and all this desire to work on something different, but you're stuck in this case. It's good to be able to relate that to other people, and it's good to vent for sure. But usually people can just sympathize. You're looking for help, but you're just getting some friendly words instead, which are nice. It's far from the worst that could happen. But still, it's not exactly what you want. So how can you get that? You might also put all your experience in a CV. You might say all your positions have been in this or that. You might list all the things you've done in your life. You might put some information about the thing you want to do the most in there, but it's buried in a sea of information that's just moving to all directions, or even worse, moving to just one specific direction that the past experience you have on the CV is leading to. So when your interviewer sees your CV, they might get a glimpse of what you want to do from what you've put there, but they will have no clear indication about it. So they'll be lost. So you will end up in the position that's most relevant to them, most needed to them, or most relevant to your past experience up to now. So let's see how you could do this in an easier way. What's the easy mode of doing this? Well, quite simply, you only focused on things that are close to your passion. These are the things that you want to work on, that you have high desire to work towards, you feel motivated to work on, and it's what you want to do, essentially. So instead of trying to talk to people all around us and complain and do this and that, let's just focus on this very simple, very straightforward 4-step framework to get you much closer to your goal than any of these other seemingly aimless actions. So first, let's start with defining your ideal position and project. This can be something like, you want to be a game designer for an RPG project. You want to be a physics engineer for an action game. That's what you want to do. You want to do physics all day long. That's your passion. Or you want to be a dot artist for a retro platformer. You don't care about these high definition, realistic or fantasy images. You just want to work with pixels and make them look beautiful. Or you might want to be a sound creator for diesel punk sounds, music, atmospheric sounds. It could be anything, but maybe that's what you want to do, and you don't have the capability right now. As long as you define it and you're very clear and specific about it, then you have a much better chance of achieving it in the future. Let me show you how. For the second step, you have to tailor your CV to exactly what you want to do. You might have heard this expression from Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop gaming, where for a dungeon master, the character sheet is like a wish list for what that character wants to do and wants to experience in the game. Your CV is kind of like that. Your CV tells a story of what you're good at and what you want to do in the future. Hence, if your CV was full of casual mobile title experience, that says that that is what you're good at, and that's probably what you would want to do in the future because you've been doing it for so long. So if instead we change how we present ourselves, we can get massively different results. So instead of writing everything that you have done in the past, only mention the experience relevant to your ideal position. Your CV should be a love letter to what you want to do in the future. So you would go from talking about this X position you did in the past or this Y project that you worked on simply in a matter of fact way. You go to, I did this position, and when I was there, I was in charge of something or learned about something. And you very carefully pick what that something is. It can be a skill, it could be something you learned about, it could be an experience, and you picked it in such a way that it subconsciously communicates to the reader of your CV that because you have done this in the past, you are good at it. And since this is most likely relevant to your future ideal position, you are a good candidate. Also, you can say that in previous project X, I achieved a Y milestone. And again, you're saying that to provide proof that you did something before, and it's not so important what that project was or what the goal of that project was in the past. It's that you put actions specifically towards achieving this goal that you had back then, and it paid. You achieved a milestone, you got some sales, you got high player numbers, whatever. So you're taking the focus away of what that project might have been in the past, and you're putting more focus to your concentrated effort to get the result you wanted. And because you got the result back then, and this future project has similar attributes, there's a high chance that you can achieve the same result next. And here you can also talk about outside work that you did unrelated to your professional experience. This could be organizing gaming nights, organizing gaming events, doing game jams or competitions and so on. These things, the more formal they are and the more recognized and more people participate, the more credible they are. So if you, for example, made a simple 2D action game for a game jam or a game contest or for your friends and you upped it on a website and that got a good response, either good reviews or lots of plays or praise, anything like that, and it's publicly visible, then that's something you can present on your CV as well. And it doesn't have to be under experience or anything like that. It can be a section on its own, or you can say that between two jobs I did this, or on my free time on the weekends I did this. The writing is up to you. But the important thing is that out of your own volition, even though this wasn't part of your job, you felt so strongly towards this that you went for it and you achieved something in it. And not only you achieved something in it, you have public proof that this was warmly received by people. And again, the numbers are not so important here. You can express them in a different way to showcase the achievement in you. So you might say, well, I showed this game in a game context, but there was only 10 people there. So I cannot brag about 10 people liking my game. That's too few. Well, perhaps, but in that situation, only 10 people saw the game. So more important than how many people praise the game is that what percentage of people praise the game. So if the same game, for example, was shown to 100 people or to 1,000, 1,000,000 people, and it got the same rate of approval, then you would indeed have thousands of people who liked your game. So don't feel like you have to dismiss these situations, because how you think about it, how you analyze it, and how you present it makes all the difference in these cases. So let's look at the specific example of how you could turn previous seemingly unrelated experience on your CV to something that is related to your dream position, and how you can present to the future interviewer that you indeed have been developing the skills that are necessary for your next position and have been slowly growing them over your past experience, and it all culminates in this one moment. So let's take the example of a background in casual games, but now you're applying for an action RPG position. How you would go about this is by identifying the elements in past positions that are relevant to your dream position. In this case, the common elements between a casual game and an action RPG could be the fast-paced gameplay. It could be that you need to send immediate feedback to the player and you need to have frequent rewards to keep them interested. It might also be that you had to develop easy to understand systems, and those of course apply to both casual games and action RPGs. And you might say, well, that sounds like a truism. Of course, you always have to develop easy to understand systems. But if you think about all the different types of games out there, not all of them require this measure of simplicity. For example, if this was a traditional RPG or perhaps a strategy game, then making the game system too simple might remove an element of enjoyment from the game. A lot of people might specifically look games that are more complicated and more difficult for enjoyment, like the Souls series or many online RPGs, for example. The complexity is an inherent part of their fun factor. So just because we say I created an easy to understand system, that doesn't mean that this is something that all games should strive for. And being able to make that distinction and make that argument would show to an interviewer that you specifically prepared the skill custom made for this game because you know how important it is and other games might not require it. And that again displays how you have used a specific skill to solve a specific problem. And that's exactly the kind of thing you want to be demonstrating. So when you sit down to rewrite your CV to showcase how your past experience in a mobile casual game applies very well to a action RPG game, you might write it like this. And you have to be specific. You say you developed a fast-paced gameplay that achieved a 30-second gameplay loop. So that is the player starting a fight, for example, doing the actions, using their abilities, defeating the enemy, getting the reward, and completing that encounter. That might be the whole loop of the fight, and you manage to compress that somewhat complex experience in just a 30-second slot. It could be 15, it could be 60. It's up to you to showcase what you want to display for your next position. But this is definitely an achievement. You can also say you designed a game system with immediate on-screen feedback messages and icons. Again, very useful for both games, casual games and action RPGs. Sometimes in games we do things but we don't get feedback about our actions until much later on, maybe until the level is complete or the mission is over or until the player dies, for example. Sometimes the feedback is not so immediate, and sometimes it doesn't need to be immediate. Sometimes the feedback being delayed and the game keeping an air of mystery about whether you did well or not could be something fun for the game. But here you're demonstrating that for past positions and secretly for your future position, this is an element you put in the game on purpose because you believe it would serve it best. Then you might say you implemented a fragmented tutorial that teaches only one mechanic per session. Again, sometimes slow tutorials are good, sometimes fragmented tutorials are good, sometimes they're not. Here you're demonstrating that you correctly understood that since this is a casual game, it wouldn't be good to front load the tutorial with lots of things that the player has to understand before they can simply start enjoying the game, even for the first level. So because you understand that, you made a specific design decision to, even though the game has many mechanics, you will only introduce one at a time in these 30-second loops that we talked about before. And that you believe would serve the player well. And secretly that would serve the player in an action RPG game as well. And whenever you're making these claims, it's very good to also show the proof of why you made these decisions and how it worked out in the end. So after you say, I did so and so and so, you cap it off by saying, this resulted in XYZ sales, in so many players playing our game, in people playing the game for 3 months or 6 months or 2 years on average. Again, don't be only thinking about sales and player numbers and millions in revenue and so on. There are many ways to find out good things about your design, good results about you achieved. And if you track the analytics, which I highly recommend regardless of the position you're working on, then you have a very good indication about what people are doing in the game, what they're enjoying about your game, also in the comments and so on. For example, one of the funny stories I remember from the Spore developers is they said, well, we don't know how well the game sold or how well it was supposed to sell, but we got lots of very good feedback from parents with young children who were playing the game Spore, and they were creating all these funny creatures and they were having so much fun with them that they would go and create drawings of all the silly and wobbly creatures they created. And that, for example, is a unique piece of fun that people had with that game. Talking about how many millions of copies it sold, or how long the retention of that game was, is something good, but it's not unique. It doesn't show that you really understood your player base and you found this unique type of fun or this unique metric about your game that sets it apart and only you know how to take advantage of to delight people more. So the more you look at these things, the more weapons you add to your arsenal about showing off your skills. Let's move to step 3, building your portfolio. And by the way, here for portfolio, I don't just mean artists or sound engineers or sound composers where you would only have music or art to show and so on. This could be for game designers. This could be for basically everyone. I'm going to show you how you can achieve this. So again, we only want to focus on relevant work. This is a very common mistake, and I'll use the example of artists, where when you're putting things together, perhaps because you think you don't have enough samples to show, or perhaps you don't know what kind of job you will land in the future, so you want to, quote unquote, maximize your chances, which is a horrible idea in my view. You might add lots of different types of work in your portfolio. If you're an artist, you might include an illustration, a few concept art sketches, some scenery, some backgrounds, some item images. Now, none of these are bad necessarily, but you have to keep in mind what the position you're applying for requires. And you might think, well, I'll just make one portfolio and I'll just send it to everyone and we'll see what happens. Well, that's how you get into the wrong career path. That is the one step before, where you send all this stuff and somebody sees something that fits their project and that starts your career. And once you start building it, then it builds on the same blocks and then it becomes more difficult to steer to the direction you want. So catching this process early and focusing exactly on the thing that you want is by far a better method of getting to your dream project than just, like with a CV, slamming all the relevant stuff you have in there and or not relevant, all the stuff you have in there and hoping for the best. So in this portfolio, you want to include published samples of your past work. That is, previous games you worked on, again, competitions and so on. You might say, well, but I don't have previously published work, or all my previous work was in some other field, in some other area that's not relevant to my dream job. That's completely fine. In this case, what you can do, and what you're probably doing in your free time anyway, is following YouTube tutorials or from other platforms about how to create a drawing, how to create a simple multiplayer server. You might putting together a simple design document for a quick mobile game. All these things are things you can put in your portfolio. And the cool thing about this is there's YouTube tutorials for absolutely everything these days. I literally mean everything. No matter how niche your skill is or the thing you want to do, there's a tutorial on YouTube about it. So my recommendation is, if you feel like you don't have enough pieces for your portfolio, and I think about 5 to 10 pieces of really relevant content would be a good place to be, is just go and find and do more tutorials. Recently, I was following the story of a friend of mine, artist, who wanted to get into the art and graphics program Houdini. So because he wanted to steer his career in that direction and he didn't have Houdini specific experience, that's exactly what he did. He watched some videos, he followed along, he completed them, resolving all the little bugs and errors that come up during the process. He completed the projects and he could put them in his CV. And you might think, well, but that's not really your work. That's somebody else who did the work and you're just following along. Well, I would argue that that is education in itself. When you're learning something, you're learning it from someone and you're simply following along. The difference is, can you do it on your own without the teacher? And that is where the learning process and going through making it and making all the mistakes and getting all the errors on the screen and finding all the little menus that are not exactly the same ones as the tutorial, and you having to Google and figure out all the answers for yourself. That's where all that experience comes in. Because when someone asks you in the future, well, how did you make this? Or can you please demonstrate with something slightly different from what you made? Then all you need to do is change a few elements of your work, and the process you know already, because you've done it before and you've troubleshooted all the problems that come up. Finally, I think it's good to add, if you feel like you need additional samples, some sketches and drafts from your personal projects. So for example, perhaps you're applying for background BGM for a game, and it might be a pretty long piece that they're looking forward to, but perhaps you have some samples that you made before and that you have short clips of. And these clips could be 30 seconds or 10 seconds or 5. If it's relevant, it gives the interviewer an idea of what you could do if you had more time to devote on this one thing. So it might seem that it's not a significant enough piece of content to impress someone, but don't discard it so quickly. If it's relevant, it is good enough, and you might want to consider including it in your portfolio. The final step for this framework is to apply for your ideal position. And this is where we're not going for quality. This is simply a numbers game. What often happens in this step is that people find the one ideal position they want to work in, their dream company, their dream project. That project might have just the right opening for them, and they apply. And if that doesn't work out, they are discouraged and they feel hopeless forever. Thankfully, it doesn't have to be that way. There is a much, much better way to go about this process. So let's see how you can get into it. First, don't just apply for one of your ideal position, apply for 10 of them. And what I mean by this is, let's say you want to be a character illustrator for Capcom. Well, that's one company in one position. Well, likely they have more positions for character illustrators, but let's just say, for the sake of this example, that they only have one. Well, why not apply to other companies as well that also need the same position? If you do, one of two things will happen. Either you'll get accepted at your dream position, so you win, or you'll get accepted for your dream position at a different company, which is also pretty good. And that is using the process we talked about in the beginning of being stuck in a career ladder that you don't want to climb, but this time you're being stuck in the right career ladder. And perhaps the position in your dream company didn't work this time, but if you start developing your ladder, and then in the future there's a chance again to apply to the company that you want to work for, then guess what? You do have the right pedigree, the right experience in your CV to be considered for that position, and thus making it much easier that you can go there in the future. By the way, if you would like an interview guide about how to tackle these interviews and how to show how you can easily steer the conversation into a direction that's more beneficial to you and to the interviewer to showcase that you are indeed the right person for the job, I will put a link down in the description for the previous video I did on this topic, and I will also link it for you in the end. But another thing you want to do is go to 10 game events. And what I mean by game events, it could be things like E3, if they're still doing it, Tokyo Game Show, if you happen to be in Japan, or any sort of industry event, GDC, local events, Gamescom. It could be any of those large industry-wide events. It could be also local events. Maybe a local game company is having a game night or a pizza night or something that they have open to the public. Also, companies that develop software related to the games industry often have public events like that for announcing their products and so on, or even updates to their products. For example, just this week I was in an event called the Game Tools and Middleware Forum. And this is just specifically about companies and people who develop middleware for doing things faster and easier between established, let's say, graphics software and game engines, or in some other configuration that helps game developers. Pretty specialized event, pretty niche, but again, all the right components are there. The right people, the right lingo, perhaps the right positions waiting for you. And how do you get to those right positions? Well, then this is where the next two steps come in. Talk to 10 recruiters. Depending on the country you're in, recruiters might have different incentives, finding you and helping you to land your dream position. And I'm talking about big companies like Robert Walters, Michael Page. There's infinite companies like that. And these companies operate in most countries with the game industry, that have a game industry. So there's a very high chance that they will be able to help you find exactly what you're looking for. And finally, talk to 10 developers. And I'm putting these as a different category because developers are different from recruiters, right? Their job is not to find you and help you find a position. They are just people working on the project. And when you talk to them, the point is that you develop a network that gets you closer and closer to your ideal position. If you can find developers related to your ideal position, obviously they are much more interesting for you to talk to. But even if they're not, perhaps they know someone who can introduce you to the right person. So the next time you see someone working in another company, working in another project, you see people working in a booth, in a game show, for example, or you just know someone who knows someone who works in a game company, this could be the right kind of person for this part of the process. You can talk to them, ask about what they're doing, what their company is doing, what the positions in their project are, and then little by little you can get closer to the kind of position and the kind of company that would be your ideal for the kind of position you want to do. And to finish this process off, let me give you a quick story in the star format that I mentioned before about how this worked for me and how it completely changed the situation that I was in at the time. So back then I was working as an engineer due to my computer science background. But I wanted to be a game designer. That's what I enjoyed. It just so happened that in that company, in that team, engineers were not really allowed to confer an opinion on the quality of the game or on the experience that the player gets, since they're engineers and they should only care about engineering. That was very stressful for me, and having my background in Dungeons and Dragons and creating rules and stories and game frameworks, I really felt more and more that I want to change to a game designer. But the problem for me was that my university experience was all in computer science. And as I mentioned before, back in the day, game design was not a discipline. It was not possible for me to have studied it in university and apply those skills in work. So the task I had to do was find a way to demonstrate my skill and my experience in game design, and then find the right position to apply to. So before I could find all that, while still working as an engineer, I took the following steps. I took some courses on game design, and this was less so that I learned the skill itself. It was more so that I could have some paper or proof that I have undergone this training, and I could now work in this kind of position. I also took a workshop with Keiji Inafune, who is the creator of Mega Man or Rockman, depending on what country you're in, which were specifically on game design. And there was also a certificate that came at the end of that. It was a 6-month workshop with him that also showed that I had the opportunity to talk to one of the most famous people in the industry, and have a proof that there was material for me to learn there and that I would apply it in my next position. And finally, I made a compilation of Dungeon Master's notes and maps and rules and little frameworks I had created over the years to show it as supplementary material, where indeed it was not work experience, but any professional game designer that would look at the same materials would see the common points. So designing for a specific kind of player, specific experience, putting together levels and rules and monsters and crafting them all into an experience, so that the people who would play the game, or in that case the D&D session, would have hopefully the experience that I'm planning for. And there's a very, very close equivalency between working in the games industry as a game designer and making D&D adventures with these elements. The result: after applying to a few positions, I got interviewed and I got hired as a junior game designer for Rage of Bahamut. And I did so with no prior official game designer experience in the working world. So the things I mentioned above did enough to demonstrate to the interviewer back then that yes, I didn't have professional experience in this, and yes, my background was in computer science, so clearly on the engineering side, but because of these courses that I graduated and my experience with Inafune-san and all the material I had compiled all over the years from our D&D sessions, would at least showcase that I was ready to be set on the path of a professional junior game designer. So, as I say, after that, all that is history, and it completely changed the career path I had at the time until today. And it had a similar effect to people who I related this story and this framework, and they chose to apply it in their own careers. So that's it for today. In the end, I want to give shout outs to my friend Johnny, who is an artist. He has a stream where he shows his art, and he's incredible with gadgets, software, knowledge about streaming. He helped me set up this wonderful multi-camera switch around kind of setup, and I'll be linking his stream link down below. And I would also like to give a shout to Aaron Glavina for his enthusiasm and his questions about the games industry. We met recently here in Tokyo as he was passing through as a traveler, and we had the chance to talk about some of these topics. He asked my opinion on a few of these things, and I shared with him some of the knowledge, this channel, and I wish him all the best in the future. So I hope this is interesting for you. I hope you found something useful that you can perhaps apply to your own work and career. And if you know someone who's struggling with being stuck in the wrong path right now and they just can't find a way through to get to their ideal job, feel free to link this video and please let me know if I can answer something that would help. So that's it for today. And as always, have fun.